If you clicked on this video because you have a tendency to catastrophize and play out worst case scenarios in your head, and you found you're doing that broadly with the state of the world at the moment, I want to offer you some encouragement today. First, I want to tell you a quick story from about 6 years ago. I realized that I had a problem, and the problem was my life wasn't going how I thought it would for my age. So at 22, although I'd had some successes and good life experiences, the only 4 important things in life were not where I thought they would be for that kind of stage in my life. So the 4 important things are: number 1, belief. Your whole experience is shaped by your mental health and your belief system. So if that's not in check, everything looks bad. And at that time, I was severely depressed. So that wasn't good. Number 2 is health. The physical vessel you have to experience this life in is your body. So if that's not in good shape, then that's a problem. I was overweight and had terrible self-esteem about how my body was. So that wasn't good. Wealth. Although it'd be nice if this wasn't the case, you need money to do anything, to feed yourself, to have any life experience, and especially to provide for your family and loved ones. And I was working a job that I didn't enjoy, and the thought of doing that for 30 to 50 years to pay a mortgage on a house that then I would retire, and it just didn't sit right with me. So my wealth wasn't in check. I wasn't earning enough, and that was a problem. And then relationships. Everything you do is in collaboration with other people, and the most meaningful relationships you can have are with your spouse and your children and your family. And although I have a very good relationship with my family, at 22, I hadn't had any meaningful relationships, and I had social anxiety that was hindering me from having positive life experiences, whether that's with relationships, with work opportunities. I was missing out because I was socially anxious and fearful to do those things. So that was my problem. To solve my problem, I did 2 things. The first thing was I consulted the help of a friend that had the things that I wanted. He was a couple of years older than me. He is a couple of years older. So I thought I'll ask him. He's got all these things in check, the 4 things. He's got belief, health, wealth, and relationships. So I asked him. That was a very smart thing to do. So if you've got a problem, and I do this with everything now, I just look at somebody that's got the thing that I want and copy what they're doing. The second thing I did was I became very perspicacious. I thought, well, there's something I don't understand about myself or the world that's stopping me from being where I want to be. So I need to understand these things more. And that's when I decided to read 100 books, and I became very observant of how things work. I was like, there's something I'm missing, because this person works a job for 50 years to pay a mortgage off on a house and barely has enough money to make ends meet. And then there's somebody over here that is 25, retired their parents and owns their own home. And there must be something about the world that me and this guy don't understand that this person does. So I thought it was an information thing. So both of those things have been very helpful, and they've had the desired effect. But the problem is, in doing this, I basically framed the question, what's wrong with me and what's wrong with the world that things aren't going to plan? So there are positive and negatives, because I learned a lot and I've implemented things and it's changed my life for the better. But when you do that, seek and you shall find, Matthew 7:7. What's wrong with me? I found a lot of things that were wrong with me. What's wrong with the world? I found a lot of things that are wrong with the world. And you might be doing this. And it doesn't help that media, negative media, gets a broader... I think this is an innate human thing, that we look for problems to solve. And it's a survival mechanism. So the news, there's no good news. If you look, all of the news is bad. Social media, it's all negative titles. For the most part, there are exceptions. So when you frame it like that, of course the world looks like it's falling apart. Your life looks like it's falling apart. And it's the red car effect. It is, if you look for it. Seek and you will find. And that's what happened. I looked and I was like, oh, my relationships aren't working because this is wrong with me, and this is wrong with social dynamics at the moment. And then that gives you a negative view, and then you start seeing it everywhere. And then you go, well, my health is bad because I'm eating foods that aren't designed for humans, and scientists and food companies make this food. So then you go, oh, well, that's terrible, these people are evil. And then you just go down some rabbit holes, which I guess is a necessary part, because I've learned a lot of things about food, about relationships, about money, and about belief that have improved my life, and I had to see the world for what it was. The problem is, you can get stuck in that mindset, and it isn't all dark and it isn't all falling apart. It may look like that because if that's what you look at on media, it's going to keep presenting you with that, and it just looks darker and darker and darker. So it wasn't just a case that I asked this friend for his help and he just told me what to do and solved all my problems, because he's 2 years or 3 years older than me. So he realised some of these things weren't sitting right in his life as well. So we both went on a journey and learnt a lot of things. And the problem is, I noticed after a couple of years of this, he started to sound like me. And in some ways, I'd started to sound like him. So you become the average of the 5 closest people to you. And we were spending a lot of time together and trying to figure things out. And the positive effect was I was becoming more like him. And that's what I wanted, because he had his life in order and I didn't. But then I noticed, oh wait, he's sounding a bit like me, and that's probably not good, because I was the one with a problem in the first place. So I realised that he'd start seeing certain things that he didn't realise about the world, and it looked like it was falling apart. Then I had to reevaluate what it is I was drawn to in the first place, and it was his faith. It was, regardless of what the world was doing, he just thought it was going to be okay. He just it hadn't occurred to him that there was going to be a bad outcome. And the problem I had was, all that occurred to me was that there was going to be bad outcomes. As long as I can remember, I've only really cared about truth. My point of view or my opinion doesn't actually matter. I've never been very egotistical in that way that I will stand up for something. If I'm proven wrong tomorrow, I'll do another video where I go, well, that was not the truth, this is what it is, or this is what it appears to be at the moment. And my friend always seemed a little bit delusional, that he just thought it was going to be okay even when the evidence says otherwise. And my brother's a lot like this. Nothing's bad, nothing, even when it's going wrong, he always sees the silver lining. So for example, he could crash his car and I would be like stressing about that, I've got to replace my car. But he would just see it as an opportunity to buy a new car. So he would go, well, there was this thing I didn't like about it. Or he'd crash his car into a curb or something and wreck his wheels, and he'd just see it as an opportunity to buy better wheels that he liked. Like, although it's going to cost him money and that's a negative, and he wouldn't have bought the wheels if that didn't happen, he always saw the positive. So this can happen in both directions. If you start asking the question, what's wrong with me and what's wrong with the world, you'll get answers. It's the red car effect. When you buy a red car, you start seeing them everywhere. There aren't more red cars. The world isn't falling apart, but you've asked what's wrong with the world, so you're going to get the answers. And then the same is true if you ask, how can this just work out in my favour today? Oh, this is just going to be a blessing. You start seeing it, and that's faith. You start to realise it's not delusional, because both things are true. And in that way, you shape your reality. So you shape your reality by being negative and seeing what's wrong with the world, and you shape your reality by being positive. And this is a hard concept to get your head around, because you'd think, well, reality and truth is only one thing. Surely the world's either good or bad. But like the yin yang, it's black and white in equal parts. That is the nature of the world. So when you know this, you have to be an optimist. You have to, because if you're going to look out for a car and the red car is the optimist car, you want to see that. So look out for that. So to give you an example, I started a YouTube channel about a year ago, and I was posting videos every day, and the views were kind of varying from 100 to 1,000, and I was gaining subscribers at a certain rate. And at the rate I was doing it, I was getting consistent views. And I saw no way it was going to take me so long to get to either of these goals with the views I was getting. Because my mindset was, you can just do the numbers. 100 views per video. To get 4,000, it's 4,000 watch hours that you need. So I was getting like 1 watch hour a video. That's 4,000 videos. That's 4,000 days. Like, that's a very long time. And my friend was like, well, if you can get 100 views, then you can get 1,000 views, and you've already got 1,000 views. So if you can get 1,000 views, you can probably, there's no reason why one video can't get 100,000 views. So that's just his faith, his optimism. I was like, judging by the previous what's happened, this is only going to go in one direction. It's going to be maximum 1,000 views per video, and it will take me a lifetime for this goal. So I work on truth, I work on data. You know, the previous videos, the 100 videos that I've got so far saying it's going to take this long, my friend wasn't working on reality, so I thought he was like delusional. Well, if one video can get 1,000 views, there's no reason why it can't get more. I thought, well, the reality isn't showing me that. And he was right, because I stopped because I had a different opportunity, and then I started again. And recently, I think one of my videos is up to 400,000 views. Now, these are arbitrary goals, and the YouTube thing, I just like to, if I can have a positive impact, then I like to make these videos. But it's a good example. I was in reality. I was saying, well, so far, my 100 videos, that's a lot of effort to put into something, have taught me that this is the outcome it's going to get, and it's quite predictable. He had faith. He said, well, no, there's no reason why it can't just randomly go to 100,000. And he was true. He was correct. I would have viewed him as delusional, but I have now adopted that delusional view of everything in my life. Everything I try, I just assume, even if reality is showing you otherwise, even if reality is trying to prove itself right that the world is a terrible place, be delusional, be optimistic. And there'll be a lot of stories and a lot of comments from people going, well, this and this has happened in my life, and that's why I'm not optimistic. But because you're not optimistic, you're now creating a reality where you have reason to be pessimistic. And maybe you was already pessimistic and these negative things started happening and you can't see the positive in them. So that's my takeaway, is the most radical thing you can do now is be an optimist. In a world that looks like it's falling apart, and with many reasons to be negative, the news will always give you 100 reasons why the world's falling apart. Now's the time to be an optimist. And you have got to kind of fake it till you make it with this. Just be an optimist and see the positive. When your car breaks down, see the positive. Do this. This is the number one most important thing, is belief. Once you start framing your life like this, you'll get more reasons. You know, seek and you will find. Seek optimism and gratitude. So that's my actionable step. Be an optimist and start to see what comes into your life that proves you right, even if it's delusional, even if there's nothing to be optimistic in your life about at the moment, or about the world. It all looks terrible. Be delusional, be optimistic, and see how your frame changes. So it's almost become the norm, depression, because when I started looking at why I was depressed, I come to the conclusion that I wasn't actually depressed. I was just living in reality, and reality wasn't that nice. So if you're depressed and you try and solve the problem and you learn about the world, you be perspicacious, you kind of find that there is a lot to be depressed about. You know, you've asked the question, why am I depressed? And you'll get the answer. And that becomes nihilism. And I don't know whether that's like a trend or kind of like the predominant mindset at the moment, but I can see a shift coming towards faith. And this is why I like Christianity, because that's the backbone of it. The assumption that you'll be okay, you know, and you know you're going to, because whatever you're going through, whether it's pain that you have to deal with, or insecurity with food or money, relationships, mental health, ask yourself, were you okay yesterday? You know, did you make it? Because you might have had this negative mindset for 6 months, thinking you're not going to be okay, but you've made it for the last 6 months. You did yesterday, you know, and you will do today, and you'll do tomorrow. And if you start adopting an optimistic mindset, you'll see your life change, and then you'll have reasons, because at the moment it might look bleak. You might think, well, the world's bad, my life's bad, I'm just surviving. Yeah, I survived the last 6 months, but there's nothing really to live for. But once you start realizing what you're grateful for, you're like, oh, well, that's what I'm living for. And then tomorrow you'll enjoy it, optimistic, and see that moving forward. So be ahead of the curve. Well, while everyone else is nihilistic and being in reality, be delusional and be optimistic. So hope that helps. Speak to you soon.